there! Welcome to the Aspect Podcast Network, the home of Bending the Narrative. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button below and be the first to listen to our new episodes and other shows from the Aspect, covering topics such as Marvel, Star Wars, Game of Thrones, and more. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Bending the Narrative here on the Aspect Network. I'm one of your hosts, Kate Kroonquist, and joining me every week to discuss the latest and greatest in the world of Avatar is Alex Batts. Alex, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Excited to get into this week's episode. So we're continuing our book 2 rewatch with the episode Return to Omashu.
But before we begin today, let's discuss the news that came out at Netflix's Geeked event. We officially have our first teaser and casting for season 2 of the live action series.
Very exciting. So Mia Chek will be playing the Blind Bandit, and it was also confirmed that season 2 is now in production. So this means the series will continue filming well into 2025 as seasons 2 and 3 will be filmed back to back. So Kate, how are you feeling about all of this news?
I'm actually excited. I know we said a lot of hate about the show,
Yeah.
but I am a sucker and I will watch it. But I'm excited that they cast this girl, Mia Chek. I checked her out. I'm happy they're casting a seasoned actor because maybe if you cast actors, they'll act good.
I do
Who
also
would've
think
thunk?
that like the casting has been one of the stronger points of the show. Like for all my gripes with it, like they're all pretty good, and they seem great. Honestly, like all the videos and stuff with them are so wholesome. You can tell they really care. So it's
Yeah.
excited to see that kind of expand. And yeah, like you, like I'm a sucker. Like watching the little teaser thing, I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. Like it,
I'm
like
like, oh, I hate it, but you know I'm gonna watch it. I
yeah,
hate them for that.
yeah. So it's exciting. There's definitely been a ton of Avatar stuff for the next handful of years, which is super exciting.
I know, because I think they'll come out around, we said 2026 and 2027. So we got, guys, this podcast is not ending soon.
Yeah,
We
there's a
got
lot of stuff
time.
coming. Yeah.
I'm so excited though. I'm excited to see who they'll cast further throughout the show. So I'm excited to see more about Azula.
Yeah. Oh, it's gonna
Maya
be fun stuff,
Lee.
and like just really getting into the like heat of book 2 and everything that like happens in there is gonna be yeah. For all of our qualms, I am excited to see how they tackle the story going forward. So
Yeah,
it'll be fun.
agreed. And we get to see Azula, Maya Lee in this episode.
Yeah.
All right, so we are going to continue tracking Team Avatar and Zuko and Iroh's separate journey on our handy dandy little world map. All right, and so we'll see that we moved much? Yeah, we moved to Omashu, but that was the end of last episode, so we're still here.
Yeah. So
So
like
we didn't move.
technically no movement if you want to like think about it that way, but yeah,
So
this
guys,
episode
this segment, just looking at the map.
it's they're just in Omashu for this whole episode, and we also don't even have Zuko and Iroh in this episode. They're not, which
Oh
it didn't
yeah,
occur to me until I got to the end of the episode, and I was like,
we
wait a
don't
second.
even see them.
Oh no, it happened whenever I started the next episode when I was rewatching. I was like, oh, like because the next one, spoiler alert, opens with them, and I was like, wait a second, we didn't have them at all like in the previous
Yeah.
one. So yeah, I think it's interesting when the show does that, and it doesn't have like one of the sets of characters or one of the groups of characters. But I think that it works in this one because of them kind of introducing a couple of new people and
Oh
like
yeah.
kind of exploring how that goes. But yeah, so this whole thing, this entire episode is just in Omashu and the gang having to deal with stuff there. But with that, I mean, we can dive into the episode. So book
Let's
2,
go.
episode 3 is directed by Ethan Spalding and written by Elizabeth Welch. And
Ethan
if you're
Spalding's
just
directing debut, also.
that's cool. I did not know that. If you're just joining us, we will be discussing the show in its totality, so be warned about spoilers. And now, as we're doing this book this season, I'm going to try to get through the main bullet points of the episode as fast as I can manage to kind of get through it. So we have the gang sneaking into Omashu, and then the other plot that's going on is Azula recruiting her friends May and Ty Lee to help
Let's
her
go.
track Zuko and Iroh, and then also the Avatar. And so those are the two kind of plot lines that we get throughout the episode. The gang is dealing with like rebels that are in Omashu and trying to get them out and deal with all of that. And then Azula recruiting May and Ty Lee. I like all the stuff with them. Like their interactions are just awesome.
You
There's not like
cannot.
there's not a ton that like happens, I guess, plot movement wise in this. Like it's mostly just like
Mm,
character stuff. Like
yeah,
they're just in
character
Omashu.
introductions and like
Yeah.
they're setting up everything. They're setting up the dice.
Yeah.
Or
So
not the
we
dice.
get
What are they? What is that phrase? You know what I'm talking about.
the setting up the chess pieces, putting them on the board.
That or the dominoes?
Yeah, that too.
I'm gonna step out of
Yeah.
this.
We're,
You keep
we're, we're
talking.
mixing metaphors. It's fine.
Mixing metaphors.
So there's a bunch of rebels that are trapped there. The gang ends up getting them out of Omashu. We learned that the city is now being called the city of New Ozai. Zulu's like, yeah, I'm doing this. So like we get
Yeah, I'm
that.
doing this.
We get Aang trying to find Boomy and rescue Boomy. And it culminates in a big battle between Azula, May, and Ty Lee and the gang. And that's a cool fight. That's like the last like 8 or so minutes of the episode, kind of.
Yes.
It's awesome. That's definitely when the episode like kicks into gear. So like that's a great sequence. And then we get Boomy telling Aang that like his inaction and his neutrality is something that was important, and like he's doing it on purpose. He's like, it's part of my plan, basically. And like we get him teaching Aang about neutral Jin. Like he talks about positive and negative Jin being like on attack and defense for combat. And then Boomy's like, yeah, there's a third one. You can also just not do stuff. And like
Well, technically,
super
there's 85.
right, of course. But like he mentions that that's super pivotal for earthbending too. So there's a little seed planted there. And yeah, that's basically it. Like the gang gets away, the rebels are out, Boomy is still captured, and like that's like we kind of end the episode almost at the same spot as like right before the episode, except now we have Azula with May and Ty Lee, and we know they're after the Avatar now as well. And Aang needing to find a new earthbending teacher because that's originally what he was wanting Boomy to do. So that's kind of like the big things that happen in the episode as far as like plot stuff. So yeah, this episode's fun. I mean, I liked it. I definitely think, like I mentioned a minute ago, like it kicks into gear whenever the action kind of starts here. Not that I just don't like the gang part of this much because there's a whole subplot with like the
Die.
generals, like like the subplot is fine. Like the baby getting like escaped and
Tom
having to deal with,
Tom, yeah.
yeah,
The
Tom Tom, right?
little
And like
zombie apocalypse. That's
yeah, like
cute.
it's
It's
fine. It's
Sokka being
funny.
smart. We
Yeah.
get to see them do their thing.
It's
But yeah,
cool,
pretty.
but it's not my favorite.
I get that. It's pretty, like, I don't want to say unforgettable, but it's nothing major.
Yeah.
But
Um
still good outlining of their characters.
yeah, and I think that definitely the plot or like following Azula and like the introduction of May and Ty Lee is really the more pivotal part of this episode because that really is going to be like setting up a lot of things that come. One of the things that it does bring up that I think is interesting is like the idea of fighting for freedom versus like tactical retreat. Because like the people are like, no, we have to
Oh,
like
yeah, this
stand,
is a good.
like we have to stand and fight for this. And Aang's like, maybe not right now though. Actually, like
Which is a good
it's
lesson to learn, yeah.
yeah. He's like, the classic live to fight another day. And so I do think that it's cool that they bring that up in this episode and kind of explore that some and like show that in action, which I think is a good thing to do and important to like remind people that like, hey, like not every fight necessarily is like the right fight at the right time, um,
Mm-hmm.
which is nice. But that's cool. I do also like the one line where like, and it's this is definitely reading into it a lot, but like whenever they have the Tom Tom, the like fire general, is he a general or like because I know that
Oh, yeah.
May,
Ooh, wait, who was he? I think I
because like
heard.
It's May's father, and she mentions that
Mm-hmm.
he's been made the whatever of Omashu, well, New Ozai now, I guess.
Who was I?
Um,
He's like the mayor, leader. I don't know if
yeah,
mayor is
essentially.
the right
I
word.
feel
What's a
like
good
they
word? Yeah.
they don't call him there, but I don't remember what they call him exactly. Um,
King?
it
Leader?
can't be a king. Something. So he's
Just
the
high
dude in charge.
position.
Yeah, he's the dude
Mm-hmm.
in charge there now.
Governor?
Um, yeah, that might be it. Either way, whenever the
Either
like
way, high position. Mm-hmm.
the earthbending like rebels and stuff are doing the head count and they realize that they have Tom Tom there and that it's the, like Fire Nation child or whatever, and the guy one Katara being like, oh look, he's so cute because he's messing around with whatever, and the guy being like, oh yeah, he's cute now, but when he grows up, like he's gonna be a killer. And it's a really interesting, like it's a super small comment, but the idea of like that kind of tribalism, and then also like how people like will grow up in whatever systems they're in and like how that then impacts them like going forward. And like that's definitely extrapolating a lot from like just a joke about a little baby and
I
like
know, yeah.
he's gonna
But
be
that's
like
the thing
but
with this show. Like every little line like that, you could be like, oh, that is how people think, and that is something that's real, and that actually has a lot of depth to it, and you can pull a lot out of just one line and infer a lot.
yeah. So that was big. The other I have two other like really big, I guess like kind of theme things for it, but like Azula's manipulation is just top tier in this episode. Like
So
it's so good.
we got gaslight, gatekeep, and girl boss,
Right.
the
She
ultimate
just hits them
trio.
all the time.
She a manipulator queen. I love women.
Yeah, she
I love women do their things.
it's such a consistent like part of her character too that was in like her introduction with the like ship captain or whatever and the way that she like talks to him. But then yeah, seeing this her do this to like her friends, May just kind of like pretty much immediately like is on board kind of because she's bored.
Mm-hmm.
But Ty Lee, like I love Ty Lee's lines where like she's like my aura has never been pinker, like which is so
I know, and
funny.
she really, you see her try to be like, no, like I really
Like
like
it's
where I am. Like
fine.
she is scared of Azula,
Yeah,
rightfully so.
and
And then
then
the way
Azula,
she, oh, she's
yeah,
scary.
she's terrifying, and just her
I
complete
love
like manipulation of the circus performance and all of that,
it.
and then Ty Lee being like, "The universe has given me strong hints that." Or no, whenever she says something and says Azula like called a little louder than the universe, because I think May, whenever they like get together, May
Hmm.
is like, oh, I thought you said that the circus was your calling and stuff. She's like Azula called a little louder. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
that's
I
so.
love too, in the episode, Azula gives her black flowers at the end, or lily flowers. But black
Mhm.
flowers are usually like an omen of bad luck and like disaster.
Mm.
They're a bad omen. So it's like,
Yeah.
ooh,
Oh,
that's pretty
right.
cool.
I did
All
notice
down
that.
to
Yeah,
those
I
little
like
things.
it. Like the camera lingers on the flowers for like just a second. It's like a super. It's a quick
I'm
shot,
like, oh,
but
nothing's wasted
it's
in this show. Nothing's wasted.
but it is a nice emphasis there. Um, so yeah, like all of that stuff I think is really solid and like just continually um, and consistently like showing her character and just what she does and her disregard to like everyone around her, including her friends. Like her friends are her
Hmm.
friends because they're terrified and because she
Yeah,
has
they're
an
not her friends. They're her
like
minions.
yeah, she has an innate position of power over them and
She's
knows
Regina
that.
George.
And yeah, exactly, and she just uses it all of the time. um so I think it's cool that they just like consistently do that. um the new gens are cool. I do like and I mean I know I already mentioned it, but like the idea of neutrality slash inaction being
Mm.
a deliberate choice I think is a cool theme. um
Because you don't really usually see that a lot in,
yeah.
I think, any kind of, I want to call it like shonen, anything where it's boys fighting, or a
Hmm.
show based around war
Combat.
and combat. It's
Yeah,
always action and, or running. It's fight or flight. It's never freeze.
yeah,
I
it's
guess to
because it's
say
like
it's
it's always
very interesting and unique.
like it's a power thing, like it's a power dynamic thing. It's like who's the
Mm.
stronger one or who can like do whatever, and like not doing something is the ultimate opposite of that. And so yeah, it's just not like talked about a lot or really like highlighted that much, but I do think it's really true because choosing to not do something is still like you're making a choice there.
Mm.
um and like that is a very like poignant thing, and it also feels very Avatar, especially like the monks,
Yeah.
like an air nomad, like that feels so like yeah, that's just is
Wait for
very in line.
the right
Yeah,
moment. Yeah.
very in line. It is
Okay.
cool too. I think that like that's super that we first get that from earthbending. I think that's a really
Oh
important thing of
yeah.
earthbending because like we also don't really um it's just they just do such a good job of like sprinkling in the little like added elements to each of
Hmm.
the like bending. Like we've learned a decent amount of earthbending at this, or not earthbending, airbending, and like the air nomads and their kind of culture at this point. And like obviously we
Hmm.
like somewhat
Learned a
consistently
lot
get
about like.
the water bending from
Mhm.
Katara and Sokka, obviously. But yeah, just like dropping in little things like that. And of course, this book and this season will have a lot more focus on earthbending and stuff. And so I like that they're
Hmm.
kind of like even
And then a big
subtly.
thing about earthbending is like listening and waiting and patience. And a big thing Aang needs to learn is
Yeah,
patience.
exactly.
So this is great.
So
But
like
we'll dive more into this when we come back, though. when
Yes.
like we're going to dive more into the episode and how it contributes to the ultimate narrative, because I think we're getting into that right now. So we'll be right back.
Hey, Aspect listener, I'm Robbie.
And I'm Alex, enjoying the show here on the Aspect Network.
Then check out Framing the Force.
We are your one-stop shop for all things in a galaxy far, far away. Each week, we discuss everything from the latest news and releases to the hottest topics in the fandom.
Beyond the films and series, we share our thoughts on every corner of the Star Wars universe, from comics to video games to collectibles and everything in between.
Join us every week as we discuss one of the greatest franchises in film history here on the Aspect Network.
Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Bending the Narrative. Before the break, we broke down the episode Return to Omashu, and now we're discussing how this episode contributes to the overall series and story in the world of Avatar. Kate, let's start with you. How do you think that this episode contributes to the overall narrative in Avatar?
We got a good amount of little droplings, I think, but very, I think, discrete ones. So we got a lot, but I think it wasn't really told to us, just little things that plant seeds further on. We get to see a lot of great action and a lot of great growth for these characters action-wise. Like the fighting styles of Katara, Sokka, and Aang, their improvements, we see a lot.
Yeah,
Katara
they're like,
kicks ass
they're
in this episode.
super confident and like
Mm-hmm.
established in their forms and kind of like how they deal with situations. They're very like, if you look at this compared to their early like combat encounters, they're so much more composed here and just immediately like
Yes.
get to it and like are so
Yeah,
like
they're ready. I
Aang
think at
is
one point knives are thrown at Katara but by May, and
mhm.
Katara uses her water whip to push these 3 boards up. So
Oh
she's
yeah, and
using
block
her
the
surroundings,
knives.
and that blocks the knives. So she's
Mhm.
not just using her bending, she's using her surroundings. And I just love to see that. I love when shows get creative with their fights and they're like, they have a sword, they just use sword. They just fight and
Yeah.
hit with sword. Like they're using everything in such creative ways. We get to see too a lot of non-bender action and
Yes.
non-benders that are just as tough, if not even more advanced than benders.
Yeah, like I mean, you just mentioned the fact that May is going one-on-one with Katara, and it's a like super even fight. They're both just like going blow for blow. It's honestly such good choreography too, and just such like you mentioned, use of the environment and like seeing both of them just go at it is awesome. And then Ty Lee also just completely like
Yes.
holding her own and like being
Bodies.
like she's so her combat is super super unique. Obviously being like the gymnast and like acrobat and all that stuff. So it's so cool to just see a super varied thing. And then we get
And I
like
feel like, yeah.
Azula and Aang 1v1ing basically like
Ah,
throughout Omashu. Like, come on, it's
ah,
sick.
it's sick.
Yeah,
It's
it's
so great.
awesome.
I also love too, I feel like very few shows show that if you're not within the power system, you're useless.
Yeah,
Or
right.
like there's no creative ways around it. Like I think a big victim of that is Harry Potter. Like
Mm.
muggles. They're like, you can't do shit. Or if you're not, I don't, you know what I mean? But a lot
Yeah,
of
like if you're
maybe even Star Wars, if you're not a Force user,
it's
I
like
don't know
one of
Star
those
Wars that well.
things.
But let me not
This
speak
happens
on
in
that.
I think the comparison that comes to mind for me is that this happens in superhero comics a lot, where like
Superhero comics, yes.
any of the human side characters, it's like what the fuck do I do with this person? Like they can't.
Yeah.
Superman can punch a planet. Like what am I doing with the
What
like
is this guy doing here?
what is Jimmy
Making
Olsen gonna like
cookies?
like gonna be doing? You know, and that's not. I know all the Jimmy Olsen fans are gonna be livid in the comments. I'm sure, but like all 2 of them. No,
All 2
but
of
like
them.
no, but it happens a lot of the time with like the human. That's why a lot of the time it's even happening now with Superman. And I don't think that Lois Lane is an example of someone who like doesn't fit in that context. But like they will give the human characters in stories like superpowers for a little bit a lot of the time because like that's just the easy go-to of like getting them to fit in with the like big action bombastic stuff that superheroes are dealing with and like Lois Lane is becoming Superwoman again in the comics right now. But like again, I don't think that she's an example of like she's always got some cool stuff to do. But like in
Mhm.
general, a lot of the human characters that aren't on that power level kind of get like sidelined,
And
and you're
it's
like, oh
hard
well.
to make them as useful as those with powers. So it
Mhm.
takes a lot of creativity and genius to incorporate non-magic
It takes
users.
like creativity and care. Like you just have to care enough to
Yes.
do it, right? Like you can make
Yes.
it. That's what this show shows is that you can make it compelling. You can make it work. Like more of the people in the show are not benders than are, but like they're all super compelling and like they're able to hold their own in battles and then also be just useful in general and like still have you invested in them. It's not like I don't care about what's happening whenever I'm seeing Sokka on screen. Granted, I don't love Sokka as much as everyone, but like, you're still
Sorry,
like,
what?
it's not. Sokka's fine. He's like on my like he's above Aang probably, but like I don't. Yeah, he's fine.
I gotta go.
But no, like they make all of the characters still like great. They're all and they have something to
Yeah.
do. It's not just like, oh, now the benders are gonna fight and like everyone who's not a bender
Mhm.
is like doing whatever now, and it
And
doesn't
there's
matter.
even a line when Katara's chi gets blocked or her bending gets blocked for temporarily. They're like, "Oh, how are
Right.
you going to manage? Or like, how are you going to do this without your bending?" And Sokka comes in, throws boomerang, and he's like, "I seem to manage."
Yeah, it's good stuff. It's really good stuff
Sokka
there.
is peak.
Also, Azula's blue flames.
Azula's blue flames.
They're super good. They're so sick. It's such a
I do
great
love it.
visual. Yeah, and
It's
they're
so
their like combat throughout Omashu is great, and Aang having to deal with Boomy the whole time and like talking with him and Boomy being like, "Bro, I'm trying to tell you that like you don't need to be doing all of this right now."
I love
Essentially,
it.
like he's like, "You're doing way too much. Like it's fine." But yeah, that whole fight is great. I
And
think
like the
it's also
chase scene through the mail shoots, which we have, like, it's great because we've seen those before, so we know kind of how they work, but to see them now used in this different way.
yeah, that's something that this season does a really good job of, especially early on, is immediately like we're back at Omashu, so it's a familiar thing. And then we see Flopsy again earlier in like at one
Oh,
point in the episode,
yes.
which is pretty cool. Like I like that payoff
Enslaved.
there. Yeah. Oh, so sad. Glad that Aang breaks him out. Also love the bit where he's like, "Yep, yep," and he's like, "Oh wait, that doesn't."
Yes,
That's
it's
not.
so good.
Like it's just
He's
a
like,
great
"Oh,
bit.
that doesn't work with you."
Yeah.
Like,
Um,
yeah, that would be a thing in this world. I love that.
but like seeing Omashu again, seeing Flopsy again, having a return to Boomy, seeing the air shoots or like the mail system again, like it does a lot to make things that we've already seen feel more meaningful and the story feel more real also and like believable, because like, oh yeah, like here's the stuff where we last saw it and like we're picking it up now, and it just like adds more connectivity to it and is like, oh yeah, like I remember that, and it just like, I don't know, it adds weight to it, I guess.
Yes.
And it's
Like
cool to
nothing
see.
is just used and forgotten. Like, you know, on a
Yeah,
lot of shows, you're like, what happened to that thing? I thought we had that thing. Oh, I guess
right.
that was just put in here for no reason. I love, and I think I'm to next week's episode. I'm also going to talk a lot about this, that nothing
Hmm.
is without use. We always come back to it. If not, if even if it's just mentioned in a little spot way in the future, they're like, we didn't forget about this. This had a purpose. This did have
Yeah,
weight to it. Trust us, everything did have its little purpose.
I mean,
I love
Sokka
that.
uses the bison whistle like in this episode, and granted that's like a
Yes.
tool, so like of course it's a consistent thing, but again, it's just like another example of like having these consistent items or places or characters that are like a through line through the series that
Mhm.
really just makes it feel like all part of the same whole, as opposed to just like going to different things and like doing
Yeah.
random stuff, I guess.
And I do
um
love we get a little seed that will be used all the way at the end. And that's the fact that you can block bending. And that's Ty
yes.
Lee. Ty Lee shows
Hmm.
us with her pressure points something we've never seen before. This is the
Good
first time
point.
that we see, yeah, that this is the first time we ever see that you can even do that, that you can even block somebody's bending.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting because I would assume that this is a different type of blocking bending than from what like Aang is able to do eventually.
Hmm.
Because like I read this
Oh,
as
yeah.
the like specific pressure, like a muscle thing. She just like can't move her arms now. And like
Well,
even
yeah,
though she
probably
does
that
like
too.
still like move them, but it's like a different like, I
Hmm.
think Tylee's is physical, whereas the Aang thing would be like spiritual. But still, the idea of like, yeah, being able to disable a bender, like them from separate them from being able to use bending, like even temporarily. Yeah, I didn't even really think about that being the first time that we like kind of see that, and that is like a big deal and like will
Because
be
I
like
mean,
a big
because
thing.
also in this episode we see Boomy, even though his hands, feet, and legs, everything's trapped within a metal box.
Hmm.
He's like, my face is still available, so I can still bend. So
Yeah,
you would
which is
think like, oh, for
interesting.
muscles, maybe if you're advanced enough, you could still bend. I don't know. It's a very interesting, like,
They are
oh,
playing
there's
kind of
more.
hard and loose with or fast and loose with these like the when you can and can't bend, because yeah, that has been something I think in other fights where they're trying to like physically restrain people from like, I think Katara have her limbs like frozen at one point, and it's like, oh, you can't,
Mhm.
probably in her fight with I'm forgetting his name, but the waterbending master
Oh,
guy.
waterbending master, yeah.
Yeah, Baku, is that his?
I wanted
No.
to say Hakoda. That's the dad.
Right.
Paku. Yeah, Master
It is
Paku.
Baku. Um, but yeah, like she gets frozen. It's like, oh, you're immobile, so you can't bend because you can't move your like limbs. But like Boomy is like, no, I got it. It's fine.
He's like, I'm a pro. I'm 112. I
Yeah.
got this.
Yeah, which is still crazy that he's that old. Dude is
And
having
then
a
also,
great
yeah,
time.
we get the seed too of you need a master who waits and listens.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the hearing that too, it's used later because, well, we'll see. But when Aang sees stuff, he's like, oh, waits and listens. That's what
Yeah,
he's looking for. So
which
it's
is
good. We
good.
do get those little seeds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean the main like future casting thing I think that this episode does, aside from that, like setting up that like Aang will need a new Earthbending Master and like gets kind of hint about who to wait for on that, is like the fact that Boomy has a plan. Also, I think is interesting. Like that he's, because that'll come back. Like we'll see Boomy later on. Again, spoiler alert. And so the idea that like he's thought that far ahead, I think is cool. And him kind of like it just wraps back into his whole like choosing not to act at the right time is like the correct thing to do. Um, and kind of the idea that he's really smart, which I think is not necessarily like he's obviously not portraying that for the most part. Like he's just this goofy like old dude, and he really like plays into that. But like the fact that he is thinking about it. Like he's 112. He's not an idiot, you know.
Yeah.
He does have that experience and that wisdom, and is like does have forethought. Um, and so I think it's cool that they're setting that up too, like already, which is nice.
And I like, because I think both Iroh and Boomy do that as old
Mhm.
men, where they play this kind of goofy, silly, stupid guy
Right. Yeah.
because everybody underestimates them and they're actually the smartest person in the room.
Yeah. Which I think is good. And Boomy just continually helping Aang is nice too, like maintaining that friendship.
Oh.
Like it's good to see. It's good to see. That's wholesome stuff. But yeah, that and setting up the like the Azula May and Ty Lee of it all is like
Oh, the best.
fantastic.
I love this.
Stuff.
This is my favorite girl group. And also, I love that this show for the time period is having 3 tough female villains.
Yeah. Oh, it's great.
Usually get.
I also love, and this has become a thing in like recent years, where villains aren't allowed to just straight up be villains, which is like an odd.
Yes.
No, it's okay. We can just have people that are bad people.
We can just have bad people.
Some people, unfortunately, are bad people. So like you don't
Like,
need.
and
And
that happens.
Azula just straight up is that. Like May and Ty Lee are like presented somewhat as that kind of. May more so, Ty Lee not really. She's clearly more reluctant from the beginning, but like they do fill that role. But yeah, just like letting Azula consistently be like, no, she's just the worst. Actually,
like she's just sucks. She's a
yeah, she
manipulator.
sucks. And I think that
She's
that's
evil.
a really like strong thing. And a lot of the time now, like things will try to be like, oh no, they're an anti-hero, or they're like actually not that bad, or like whatever thing. And it's like I don't need that stuff.
Give me a
Sometimes I
Bond
just
villain. Give me some guy who's
yeah,
evil just to be evil.
just like yeah, like let him be the worst. It's super entertaining. Like I will root for that because it's just cool to see. Like it's not
just
like
entertaining.
yeah, like that's the whole point, right? Like you need a villain, you need a great villain. So yeah,
What was I just watching? We're literally, so this is for anime fans, but My Hero Academia, the main villain, literally, he's like, I just want to kill everybody. He's
awesome.
like, I don't like this
Love
society, but he wants to
Love
kill
it,
her.
dude.
I don't know. This is anime
Incredible.
fans. Like, he's just evil.
Yeah.
That's who he is.
It's so funny whenever you get that, like there's that villain and then like I want to take over the world villain, and a lot of time they'll be like, I want to take over the world because like I have a vision for how it'll be more peaceful, or like people that are like, nah, I just want to rule everyone.
Like, nah, I just want power.
Yeah.
Like, okay, heard.
Ozai's definitely the like latter of those. He misguides himself into thinking that he's doing it he's like, the world would be peaceful under me. I'm like, bro, you're just a tyrant. That's fine.
It's like, yeah. And I think that's Ozai too. Ozai's like,
yeah,
no, I just want to rule everything. The world will be Ozai's world.
But it's great that the show is like, yeah, we'll give you some just straight up villains. They don't need to be also slightly good. And that's not to say that they don't add depth to them, because I think that's something that gets lost a lot of the time, is that people think the only way that like by adding depth to them, you automatically have to make them like not a villain somehow, or that will do something to kind of like undermine them just being evil or bad or whatever. And I don't think that necessarily, like, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. Like, I don't think that you have to, like, if you're going to add depth, you have to make them like an anti-hero or like not actually that bad or whatever the case may be. Like, you can still explore the character in meaningful ways, but then at the
Yeah.
end of the day be like, this is still a bad person. Because you do
Yeah.
that because you show you have Zuko, right? Like,
Ah,
Azula is a bad person because of her upbringing for the most part, but like Zuko also had the same upbringing and like he didn't turn out that way. Like,
yeah,
your
he's a
way to
good
do
guy in
that
his heart.
is like every other character in the story. You're like, well, they're not the worst person also. Like, and so that's how
Yeah.
you're able to like contrast that and still like
I'm
give them
trying to
depth.
think, like, Anakin is kind of like that too.
Yeah,
Well, this
kind
is
of.
once again stepping into a zone I don't know much about, but
But you're always like, I'm gonna go to Star Wars though,
I'm
for
gonna Star
sure.
Wars. Don't know enough about it, but I'm gonna talk about it.
Yeah.
But
But
yeah,
no, I think
another thing too. Oh, sorry. Wait. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was going to talk. Another thing I love about this episode is they're leaning back into those dark themes of war
Mhm.
and like the small minor effects of war, like the underground resistance that's literally underground.
Oh, I did make a note about that. It's funny.
But then I do love, like you were talking about earlier, that Aang is telling them, you either choose to fight now and waste all your energy, or wait and live to fight another day. And that's
Mhm.
something that happens in war everywhere, is the choice of fighting now or saving yourself.
Yeah.
And
It
then
is
I
a
love that all the
super
guys are like, that sounds pretty nice.
yeah. They're like, I kind of agree with this kid actually.
I agree with living another day.
I do think it's an interesting conversation, an idea though, about like at what point, like when do you knowing when to make that choice, like how long do you keep on living to fight another day, or like having to be like, no, we need to like do something that like they've been in war for 100 years at this point. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like, and so they don't really get into that side of it too much in this episode. This one's more about hammering home the idea that like it is important to recognize when you need to like retreat and live to fight another day, and like that's the point of this one. But like the flip side of that, I think, and then we see that in other episodes, is like knowing when to take a stand also, and like, no, sometimes you just have to like stand there and fight and there is no other option. And so yeah, I think those are both like two very interesting sides. The show does very well in different episodes and different stories, and like gets to those points, which I think is cool. Yeah, it's insane that this is a kid's show and they're really like hitting all these like gnarly themes, honestly. Just like
They're
super
like, in war,
consistently.
this is how refugees are created.
Right.
Their
Yeah,
land gets
straight up.
taken over, and to save them all, they have to leave.
And also like this is how cities get named, like because they were conquered and now this person's like, this is my city now actually. Like, and
New
it's like, oh
Ozai.
yeah.
I live in New Jersey. New York.
Yeah. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Wonder how that came about.
Yeah.
Also, this is just a fun little extra fact that I found.
Okay.
But the Fire Nation planned to make the entire city of Omashu earthbending proof by covering it in metal. And you kind of start to see that in the episode. And some of the background drawings, they're like, they have this plan to start covering it all in metal.
Oh, right, the scaffolding. That makes sense.
The scaffolding and
like
everything.
why there's all the scaffolding, yeah.
But also, like, everything within the city is, the only way it's useful is because they need earthbending. And so they start implementing their like Fire Nation mechanics into it all. And so they're
like making the earthbending obsolete. Yeah, that's interesting. That also, the idea of a whole like of an entirely metal city. I immediately just thought of the metal cities in Korra. Do we get in? What is that? Is that book 2 of Korra? Book 3? I don't remember. It's been a bit since I watched Korra, but like those are.
I'm waiting to rewatch it.
I can't wait to eventually get to that. But like that's immediately what popped into mind. That's cool. You can kind of see that. Like, I have to imagine that was some sort of like they might have thought about that like later down the line. They're like, oh yeah, like this would be a cool thing to do. And then also it's just again showing the industrialization that the Fire Nation brings to all the lands that it conquers, and like taking out the more natural
taking out the natural
resources.
things, and
and then also like the culture
forcing.
there too, just like completely like coming in and overriding everything, like literally building on top of and like tearing down the existing pillars of like the city and the community, and just like turning it into the Fire Nation. Oh, that's so pleasant. Gotta love those guys.
Pleasant. And that is what happens in real life in war.
again, the show just, it's so good because it's not like overtly telling you any of these things, right? It's just like showing it. And if you don't
Mhm.
like think about it more, it's not like a super, not that it's not obvious because it's there and it's happening, but the show doesn't make a point to be like, this is the Fire Nation coming in and conquering and like colonizing and bringing industrialization to this place. It's just like a super subtle, like, oh, they're here now, the city's renamed, and like there's scaffolding all over the place. It's a more like just in the background, like happening over time and kind of
And so
like,
like inferred too. I like that. There's a lot
yeah,
of and even just with the small things, like hearing about I love that you can learn so much too about Ty Lee and May just by the simple, just like little words dropped here and there about you hear
mhm,
about like the Fire Nation Academy, that they were all girls together at the Fire Nation Academy, the
right.
all girls Fire Nation Academy or something growing up. That's
Uh-huh.
background on all of them that you learn a
The
bit about them growing up.
the AGFA.
The what?
The all girls Fire Nation. No, I forgot the end.
Agfana. Yeah, I went to
Fire
Agfana.
all girls Fire Academy. Then
He
they probably had,
immediately had to
knowing
make
their national pride, they definitely had to have the N in the acronym too. Yeah.
Sotro Fire Nation Academy.
No, but it
Right, I
is
think
a
I
big
wrote it
thing,
down.
and you like see we get the hint of the Mei and Zuko stuff,
Oh,
which
yes.
is
Oh,
so interesting. It's just a
they're like,
super subtle like Tylee's like, oh, we're probably gonna see Zuko again, and then you get that smile from Mei. You're like, okay,
you're like, oh,
interesting,
so they have a little
interesting.
thing.
Yeah, which I think is cool.
I like that.
Yeah,
Like nobody had to say like, oh my gosh, you're going to see Zuko again. Remember when you guys had a relationship?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just the more subtle, just like bringing it up and planting that seed, which is good. Their
And like
characters
people
do get,
get it.
yeah, you don't have to, it's the show, don't tell. Even though they are like sort of telling there, but not really. Like they don't have to go like, they don't have to over explain it, which is good. Um, yeah, their characters are just such strong introductions too. And like I love how immediately like contrast, like they're such strong contrasts to each other also, and then also
Yes.
Azula, like they're such, all three of them are such different personalities, and it's such an interesting when you just get them all together and like how they bounce off each other is really
I do
cool.
love it. We get like a good dynamic of just like fun little, and it's cool. I like that they put in a character that's super bubbly and girly and literally sounds like me. And I was like, nah. And then May, who's the dark, evil girl.
Hmm. She's
It's
so
just
just
such a
like,
good like
she's so
contrast to
emo.
Azula.
It's so funny. She's like, I'm bored, I just want to do anything and like throw
She's
my
the
knives at
original
people.
goth girl.
She's so funny, honestly. And it's
I
also
love
so
that.
like, it's so funny thinking about her and Zuko. Is like obviously her and Zuko like were a couple.
Like
It
that's
just
just
makes,
so typical. I love it.
it makes so much sense. Um,
It's so
yeah,
perfect.
they're
But
great.
yeah, they're great. I love it. We get seeds for that as well. It's a good.
Hmm.
This is a seed. This is our seed planter episode.
Hmm. Yeah, this
Omashu.
is almost doing the like premiere did a lot to set up the season as we talked about, but this is doing a lot in terms of like specific character
Mm-hmm.
like setting them up and where they're like now we literally have like Azula's going to be going after Zuko Iroh and the Avatar. She's got Mai and Ty Lee with her. The
Mm-hmm.
gang's just full on the run and needs an earthbending teacher. Like that's the season basically. Like
Mm-hmm.
now.
Oh, and we get to Azula says at the end, she's like, we're not just looking for Zuko and Ira, we're also now looking for the Avatar.
Yeah.
We
It's
now,
like it
yeah.
just 100% like that. That's not what we're going to
Like,
be dealing with.
like, okay, now we got her chasing the gang.
Yeah. It's because
So
she's
we're
just like
screwed.
fully taken the place of Zuko from season 1, which is cool.
Mm-hmm. We got to have our main active villain.
Yeah.
And
And
they're
again,
women.
yeah, oh,
I'm just
incredible.
so
And I
happy about
love
that.
to,
And like young women too, you know?
yeah, it's super strong. And the show, I've mentioned this before, but it does a good job of like consistently having the villain and the hero interact with each other. Like it's not they're face to face. Like Azula and Aang fight in this episode, as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
like them just like her just chasing him and like not really ever coming into contact until like the final episode of the season or whatever. Like
Yeah.
that's not as satisfying as like, oh, we see them like interact a lot and you get to build that kind of dynamic and that conflict between them and you get to see it and it's not just like a one-time thing, it's a consistent thing and it makes it way more engaging.
Oh, yes. And it builds upon it better too. We get
Yeah.
it's satisfying. It's all so satisfying. My brain is just like nom, 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 as I watch this show. And
Yeah.
then it's beautiful too. I mean, we
Oh
see a
yeah.
lot, like just the animation, the production quality is with each episode in this season, we see it increase more and more. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this more too in I think 2 episodes. In Avatar Day, there's some very cool animation techniques. There's a lot of new techniques used too that we will get to.
We'll get
That's
there.
Parts. So keep listening, guys. But any last minute things you want to say about this episode?
I don't think so. Not like too much on this one. Again, there's not like the episode kind of ends at the same place before it began. Just more characters, which is great.
Yeah.
More characters, new missions for the characters. Kind of they have a new focus points to kind of like guide themselves to. But yeah, I think that's all I got.
Agreed. Yeah. So thank you guys for tuning in to Bending the Narrative this week. Next week, we are facing our inner fears with the swamp. Ooh. But first, Alex, where can people find you online?
You can find me online at the Alex Batts. It's BATTS on both Twitter and Instagram.
And you can find me online at Kate the Official on Instagram.
Nice. And please be sure to subscribe here to The Aspect on YouTube and any platform where podcasts can be found. Please give us a like, leave a comment, and turn on that notification bell. You can also follow us on Twitter/X, Instagram, and TikTok at The Aspect Co. Big thank you to Peter Fraser for providing our series music. And again, thank you so much for listening.
And Flamio Hotman.
Hey, thank you for tuning in.
If you enjoyed this show, then be sure to subscribe here to The Aspect so you never miss an episode.
And be sure to check out some of our other shows and videos on the Aspect Network.
Thank you so much for listening, and Flamio Hotman.